Hello and welcome back to another episode of the CrossFit Harrow podcast. We are episode number 1 and we have Georgina in today. Georgina, thank you for joining us. First question that always goes out is, why CrossFit Harrow? What brought you here?
So my brother does a lot of CrossFit
Okay.
up in Leeds, and he's done it for about 2 years now, and absolutely loved it. Was raving about it, and I'd always been really tempted to do it. And then I moved up here. I used to live over in East London and found you guys online basically, and seemed really welcoming. I had a really good, no sweat intro with subs and everything, and haven't really looked back since. That was at the beginning of this year. It's been really good.
Nice. And then what has always been like? You've always been around sports. Have you not so much been around sports?
I've always loved sports. Yeah. So when I was younger, I was on kind of any team going basically. Played hockey, tennis, athletics, and kind of that carried on a bit in university, but then it slowed down a little bit. I put on a bunch of weight at uni. Was drinking too much, eating the wrong things, all of that, and then I guess got more into kind of long distance running, that sort of thing after that, but realised actually for kind of my joints and all of that I needed to be a bit more varied in what I was doing. So I tried lots of other things, and still like to do lots of other things like yoga, triathlon, do loads of cycling, all of that, but CrossFit's stuck, I think, because there's so much variability in what you actually do, and it feels really good for your mobility in particular. That's something I've always struggled with. But yeah, I've always liked to try and keep fit.
Nice. And you've recently taken part in a quite a big distance. Was that running?
Yeah. So I did my first ultra marathon a couple of weeks ago.
What is the distance of an ultra marathon?
It's basically anything above a marathon. So I'd done a few marathons before, but this is my first ultra, and it's 36 miles up in Leeds. Again,
that's where it's originally from, yeah?
Yeah. So I'm from Wakefield, just near Leeds.
Is that that's where they film? Is that where they film one of the soaps? They film one of the soaps there? I don't know which one.
Do they film one of the soaps there? I don't know.
Where's Carr? That's Manchester, isn't it?
Carr, that's other side of the Pennines.
Never mind. Whatever the other one is.
But no, there's
definitely.
There's a big prison in Wakefield. That's what people usually.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what people usually know it for. That, or you kind of go for it from the train from London to York. But no. So I did my first ultra, and again, it was my brother that got me into it. He did his first one just at the beginning of the summer. Absolutely loved it.
And that was just from doing had he trained for that, or was it just off the cuff? He wanted to do it because you guys have been talking about it.
So he actually got diagnosed with arthritis a couple of years ago, and I think his mindset was that he wanted to do this stuff whilst he still could, and he didn't have too much pain in his hips and his knees, and he had to have a hip operation at the beginning of last year, so there's loads of rehab and stuff associated with that. So as soon as he was fit enough again, he started setting himself challenges and everything, and I was really motivated by that as well, and wanted to be there, and it'd be a fun thing to do for us to train together and stuff.
Gave you a little bit of inspiration, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And he's got so into it, and he's a really motivated guy. He sets himself a goal and he'll go for it. Whereas I'll try and do that, but I'm probably a little bit less kind of disciplined. But anyway, so yeah, really did train for the ultra, and it was a brilliant experience. It was through it was a trail ultra all around Otley, kind of basically on the border of North Yorkshire and West Yorkshire.
Was it a map that you routed? Was it a route that you mapped out?
No, they basically gave you the GPX and you had to kind of find it yourself. But at some points of it, you're literally on your hands and knees, because it was.
Oh, really?
It was, the elevation was absolutely nuts. It took me 9 hours.
Wow.
I was probably in the bottom third, but it was brilliant. And the main thing that got me through it was knowing that my body will be all right. I can get to the end. I know that I'm strong enough to do that. But it was all a mental game, really. But No, it's definitely, and I'm already looking at like the next challenge.
That was my next question. I'm like, when are you going to do the next? Have you signed up for the next one? Are you looking?
I'm looking for, so the company that we did it with, they do loads of ultras like around Yorkshire and stuff, so I might end up doing one of those, but I'm now looking at an Ironman next year.
Oh wow.
Which yeah, I mean, that's something that you just have to dedicate your whole life to like even be ready to kind of be at the start line. But yeah, it'd be brilliant. So I'm maybe thinking about one in Nottingham, which is like in July, end of July next year.
Would the biggest or the hardest out of the three be the swim for you?
Definitely, yeah.
Can you swim?
I can swim, and I swam a bit like in junior school and stuff, and so that was all fine. But swimming's so technical, like so technical, and I haven't found the most efficient way to swim, and so it feels so hard. Like I did my first triathlon this year as well, and was
that full distance triathlon?
That was sprint. Okay. So what was that? 750 meters swim, 20k bike, and then 5k run. Cycling, absolutely smashed it. You know, was felt really, really good.
Because you go out on cycles regularly, don't you?
Yeah. I love cycling. It's loads of fun. Run was absolutely fine, felt really good, but the swim, I was a full 8 minutes slower than other people my age, and I don't know what it is, and so I need to, that's probably the thing that I want to improve.
Had you had lessons like going into that, or was just like you to improve that? Would it be something that you consider doing, having lessons?
Yeah.
Going into the the Ironman.
Yeah, definitely. Because as I say, it's so technical, and like brute strength is only going to get you so far. Yeah. So I think I'll probably end up looking for a coach or something for the swimming element next year. But we'll see. The other thing was that I'd never done open water swimming before.
Yeah, we've spoke about this a couple of times on the podcast, and it is hard. Yeah, it is very, very hard.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but amazing. I did it for the first time this year, and
where did you do it?
There's a place up at Merchant Taylor's School.
Oh yeah.
And guys that run it are lovely, and but you just kind of paddling about, and then you look over and there's like a massive bird to your left kind of thing, and it's just really, I find it really freeing and lovely to be just kind of with nature and in that environment. So it's really good, but it is so hard, and you don't have the luxury of the side of the pool to just have that little rest.
That was my biggest fear, when I done it, I struggled touching. I have to be able to touch the sides of the floor or something. Yeah. Otherwise you just have to swim.
Yeah. Have you done much open water swimming?
Once.
Right.
I don't think I'll ever do it again.
Fair enough.
It was a random day. I went to Windsor. There's a place in Windsor. I can't remember what it's called. It's one of my friends that used to come here, and she said, fancy open water swim. And I had shorts on that were swim shorts, but not swim shorts, the material-wise. I thought, just bring me a towel and goggles, I'll be good to go. And I'm not the strongest swimmer. I can swim, but near-death experience for me.
Really?
I just panicked. The fact that I couldn't touch the sides, I couldn't touch the bottom. I can't tread water either.
Right. Okay.
Which is strange. I can swim, but I can't tread water.
Yeah.
My body doesn't float.
Right.
So I don't think I'll be doing it back in a hurry. I definitely need swimming lessons.
Yeah.
In order to do, even if I want to do a triathlon properly, I'd have to do swim lessons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's the biggest fear.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But the whole floating thing, there is a thing called negative buoyancy, isn't it?
Yeah. I keep saying that my body's not designed to float, but people just laugh at me.
Yeah, no, me and my brother say the same thing, because he's the same. No, because
at least there's more than one of us. Yeah.
Yeah, and they say no, you're just not good at swimming, but it's definitely a thing.
Let's talk about your job and kind of where you've gone through career-wise. At uni, what did you study?
So I studied a bachelor's in politics and sociology at Newcastle University, which was loads and loads of fun, and included a half a year in Oslo, where we did loads of studying about international development and basically just a lot of kind of political economy stuff, and and all of that. But that kind of got me interested in working in the third sector, in the charity sector, but more importantly doing stuff that had a sense of social justice to it, I suppose. And then after that I went and did a Master's of Science in Manchester Uni in Poverty and Development, so kind of carried on the international development stuff. And after that, I graduated when kind of recession hit and there weren't really many jobs out there. So like loads of other people, I did lots of internships and lived at home and was applying for 3 jobs a day, that kind of thing. Anyway, but I did internships with the British Red Cross, Oxfam, did a little bit of stuff with ActionAid as well, before landing, that was, I suppose it was a kind of short-term job with a membership organisation in Brussels that lobbied and campaigned on international development issues, but directed at kind of EU institutions.
Okay.
That was loads of fun, and loved having the opportunity to work abroad as well, and getting immersed in all the kind of nuts and bolts of European Union policy was really
Is it very
interesting.
different from England and from Britain?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even just the way things like the European Parliament are set up, it's a lot more transparent in terms of a kind of policy making process and an engagement process. Like it just was a little bit more accessible to kind of see an MEP than it is to try and get a bit of time with an MP. Yeah. I'd say. And there's kind of less tradition and stuff attached to it. You've got things like electronic voting and stuff, whereas here you've got people walking down corridors to vote. So yeah, it's totally different in terms of like a culture and everything. But both really, really interesting to me. And after that, I worked at a public affairs firm for a little bit. That was more kind of working with the private health sector to basically lobby EU institutions again, but on kind of stuff related to how medicines are appraised and made available, which was fantastic. Like I learned loads during that process, but it didn't really sit well with my soul. I wanted to go back to third sector, and I was ready to come back to the UK at that point as well. So I moved back to London and started work initially at the MS Society. I was there for about 6.5 years. And then started this job in January of last year, where I've run a small charity that campaigns and lobbies on policies to do with services for people with neurological conditions.
Neurological Alliance.
That's it. Yeah.
And it lives close to your heart, really, is why you kind of got into it, right?
Yeah, definitely. My mum was diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis, when I was really young, so I've never really known life without kind of MS in it. Okay. I was 3. She's actually been able to live like really well with it. She's she's kept active, kept kind of mentally and physically active, and so really mobile. And I don't think she would say MS affects her really, like day to day, and she did get good support from physiotherapists in particular, and she also had some friends that had similar experiences, and I think that really helped her. But on the other side, my uncle, he was in a really nasty car accident when I was in my late teens, left him with permanent kind of brain injuries, and ended up not being able to look after himself and living out the rest of his days in a care home. But both just gave me really kind of first-hand experience of what the difference that good care can make. And so I'm now working in a job where I'm trying to make sure that everybody that might experience these things get as good care as possible. And that's really rewarding, and it means a lot. I like to think it's making a little bit of a difference.
Job satisfaction must be like through the roof, right?
Yeah. There's annoying stuff as well, but
absolutely.
As with every job. But that's the bit that I enjoy the most is kind of interacting with people that might be living with neurological conditions and just hearing their experiences and making sure that they're at the forefront of everything that we're doing. But Also, there's nothing quite like knowing that you've landed kind of an important argument with the right person at the right time and been able to make a little change in public policy, and that's hugely rewarding.
You say there at the right time, because I think that, a lot of people know, like, in those positions that can change things, probably know a lot of this stuff that goes on with the lack of maybe funding. We'll go through the different things that challenges you might face, but until it happens maybe to someone close to them, they might not see that actually the benefit of whatever that thing is that you're trying to improve or bring in. Does that make sense? Yeah, definitely. It's so individual as well in terms of just... Because everyone's needs in that case, everyone's needs anywhere are different, but especially in those cases, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's not always a clinical thing. It might be because, they don't have the right support networks around them to help them kind of process a really difficult diagnosis, or they might not have the information they need to kind of navigate what can be a really, really difficult and complex health and care system. So getting all that stuff right, though, is just so important. I hear from just so many really inspiring and fantastic individuals who have had these kind of life-changing diagnoses, and they've been able to get the right support. They've had people that have listened to them. They've been able to connect to people that have had similar experiences. They were able to get services when they need it, and all of that. And it really, really matters. And there's lots of societal benefit to it as well, to people, not just with neurological conditions, but lots of other long-term conditions, getting the right support. And so, I think that's quite a compelling argument for change.
How much support is actually out there for those with neurological conditions?
It's really, really dependent on lots of things. So, to give you an example, there are some treatment options available for like progressive neurological conditions like MS that might mean that it slows down the rate at which like your mobility might be declining, or help with your cognition or that sort of thing. So there's stuff that you can do, whereas and there's kind of medicines available for that, and so that might mean that there's services available to you and you'll be kind of seen within the service and all of that. There are other conditions where we don't have a huge amount that we can do other than provide much needed kind of psychological support or pain alleviation, that sort of thing. But I've heard of some really horrible stuff where services are just totally overwhelmed, particularly at the moment, and so people are being discharged earlier than they ought to be because of the lack of options that might be available. But there are some places in the UK that are doing this stuff really, really well, almost across the board, and it's just that it doesn't exist everywhere, especially not in kind of, I don't know, like outside of London. It can be hard to recruit kind of the right specialists and stuff.
Is that because there's a lack of funding and a lack of awareness?
Yeah, funding's a big thing. I mean, neurology typically hasn't been kind of top of the political agenda either. So you don't tend to get large kind of sums of money committed at budget, or so that's always a really big challenge.
Would that be from government? Would that be from private investors, or I say donations really, as opposed to investors?
I see what you mean, but. Government's a big one. So, to give you an example, we don't have like a national clinical director for neurology, despite there being 1 in 6 that live with a neurological condition. So that means that we don't necessarily have kind of a natural focal point for...
Someone shouting for it.
Yeah, exactly. Like baked within the system. And it's so important that we have that. We don't have things like a national plan to improve services, despite... there being, there's so much really exciting innovation on the way. Like we might have a new, disease-modifying therapy for Alzheimer's in the next couple of years. That's going to change demand on services like massively. But at the moment, there's not a chance that every service across the UK would be able to deliver that. So it's typically not had a huge amount of political attention or funding, and that undoubtedly translates into
Maybe
unwarranted variation in kind of what exists. So I guess my job is, because I see all this stuff going through the pipeline, particularly kind of treatments and interventions coming through, and just think this is fantastic. This could really transform people's lives, but we absolutely need to make sure we've got the right people and the right, space and investment to make sure people benefit from it. And I think we're slowly starting to win that argument, but it just takes time.
Is it also hard finding specialists to work in that area too?
Yeah. It's that's kind of, there's a lot of kind of complexities to that, but I think there's something about making sure that there's good opportunities for people to kind of train up, and that the specialty of kind of neurology is visible as people are like going through medicine and all that sort of thing. And also the kind of demands on the job are changing. So typically, for example, there's been a kind of historic split between like stroke services, neurology services, and dementia services. They're all kind of concerned with the brain and spine, and but that means you're also kind of dividing the kind of potential people that could be working on those things. So, there's a big push at the moment to try and bring some of those disciplines a little bit more closely aligned, and make sure that as people are being trained up through the system, that they're getting a flavour for kind of dementia and neurology and stroke, so it's all kind of coming together, which I think is really encouraging. But there's a lot of kind of history that I won't even attempt to fully understand.
Will we ever?
Well, yeah, exactly. But no, it's coming through. And then you've got things like neurosurgery, for example. We have absolutely no problem with the number of neurosurgeons coming through. There's a lot of interest, but what we don't have is a space. Right. Like there aren't enough ITU beds, for example, after somebody's had a operation, that sort of thing, in some areas. So it depends on the problem, depends on the specialty. But yeah,
it must be quite difficult then to balance those people that need that support more than others, or who requirements are a little bit greater. They might be some of the daily challenges as well that you might not directly deal with, but in hospitals they might.
Yeah, I definitely think that colleagues in services are having to make really difficult decisions about how they spend their time, and particularly at the moment when you think about just like the number of people waiting at the moment for an appointment in a hospital is like skyrocketing. I think it's more than 5 million.
Yeah, I was going to say like 5.6 million people on the wait list.
Yeah,
I saw that yesterday.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive. I mean, in neurology alone, it was around about 100 kind of before the pandemic hit. 100 people that have been waiting more than a year for a neurology appointment. It's now more than 2,500. So, it's like thousands of % increase, basically. And so, clinicians are having to think, well, who do we bring in first? Who's got the most urgent needs? And that, if you think about it, if you're on a waiting list as well, that wait isn't static. Like, if you've got a suspected neurological condition, like that could be impacting in so many ways. It could be progressing more quickly as well. And really sadly, we know that for some conditions, that the sooner you get treated, the better. But there are lengthy waits just because the capacity is not there in the system. So I really do sympathise with clinicians who are having to make those decisions. What could a
day-to-day person who's not involved do to raise awareness, to help support? What is anything that the public can do?
Oh, loads. There's loads. So my organisation is like a membership organisation for charities that work to support people with neurological conditions. So people like the MS Society, Sue Ryder, Parkinson's UK, MNDA, and they have, there's loads of ways that you can support them, be it kind of, you might want to run a marathon for them, you might want to volunteer for them, you can do some really, really interesting, cool stuff like, volunteer to be part of their helpline, to listening to people when they need it most. You can campaign for change as well, so you can sign up to things like their campaigns community and write to Boris or whoever it might be to kind of try and get their attention. So it depends, but, there's so much that people can
there
give.
There are plenty of ways, yeah.
Definitely. And well, it comes back to that thing, everybody's individual, everybody's got loads of different skills that they can offer, but just even 2 minutes of your time can make a big difference. And you're part of a wider community. You know?
Even starting the conversation really to raise that awareness to that person, to another person, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I would assume that some people, maybe in extreme cases, might have GoFundMe pages where they need that financial support too.
Yeah.
I'm sure that would be somewhere out there.
Yeah, no, there's definitely stuff that goes on there as well, particularly for, there's treatments that maybe aren't available or here yet, or there's been lots of stuff in the news about like the use of medicinal cannabis, that sort of thing, in amongst like children with epilepsy, and there's lots of people that will set up those fundraising pages because they're not able to get it through the NHS or pay for it privately. So, yeah. If
you could absolutely change something tomorrow about it, the situation, what would you change?
That's a good question.
That's a tough question. That's an on-the-spot question. What would be the biggest thing or even the top 3 biggest things that you would implement or maybe change straight away to access more support or information?
So I think a really big thing that I'm very passionate about is I would invest far more in social care. And that's not just, obviously for people with neurological conditions, but the social care system here in England is broken, undoubtedly, and people are still selling the houses for care, and paying through the nose for care that might not be more than kind of 15-minute visits. So it doesn't really meet their needs. So a properly, reformed social care system that has urgent funding to back it up would be ask number one. The second would be investing in our workforce. They've gone through a hell of a lot over lockdown and over COVID. They're feeling the strain. I think there's going to be an awful lot of early retirement as well. So, we need to make sure that we've got a decent plan to recruit the right people, but also to make sure that they feel supported to kind of stick around. And I guess the final thing would be so many of my members have been hit really, really hard by COVID. Some of them have lost about 40% of their income over the last year. There's been a bit of funding made available through kind of emergency funds, that sort of thing, through government, and grant makers have been really generous in many cases. But to be honest with you, the charity sector is still struggling, and they step in when the state isn't there, right? So really valuing the sector and making sure that they've got the funding and support necessary to provide really, really vital information to people. A plan around that would be great.
I would imagine over the whole COVID scenario that funding or donations to charities probably reduced quite a lot, right? Dramatically.
Yeah, hugely. So the 40% figure, that was about, we did a survey of other health and care charities right at the beginning of lockdown, and on average they were predicting that they were going to lose about 40%, and then membership to our body is income assessed, and we can see that people have kind of dropped bands as well, because they've lost money and they've lost people as well. That's the other thing I don't think that people get, is that, or it's perhaps not widely known, is that if you volunteer for a charity like Sue Ryder, for example, chances are you have a personal connection to a neurological condition, or you might have one yourself. And they're precisely people that might well have had to be shielding or been particularly isolated or whatever. And, the volunteer kind of workforce, for want of a better word, has also been through an awful lot. And there's been loads of money because shops have been closed, marathons haven't been run. Investors are losing money as well, because there's a broader kind of economic downturn coming. So it's really hard times.
Hopefully that people can, from this, with the different levels of support, or they can start to help in some way, shape or form. It just takes that small step, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it's fantastic to be able to talk about it. On this sort of thing as well. Yeah,
unless it's brought up sometimes, like maybe just like through day to day, we don't realise a lot of the other stuff that, we don't see around us, because like you said, there's generally a personal connection. And I would imagine that obviously, before, as I said, the job satisfaction is quite high, but maybe not so many people wanting to get into it because they don't have that experience with working with someone who has that condition, or maybe it doesn't offer them the best career. Like, and people go different ways for those reasons, right?
Yeah, definitely. But chances are, if I think about, people that come here, for example, like, I would expect most people would know somebody who has some sort of neurological condition, but haven't necessarily, even something like migraine, that sort of thing.
Well, don't even know how to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. Don't necessarily know how to talk about it, and might not realise that there are others out there that are experiencing similar things. So it's good to talk about it.
I want to talk about inclusivity and being a part of the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
There was a plus. I was just making sure I was reading it right. There was an I on the end. I've never seen the I on the end, but I've actually never spoken about it. So, and it's actually quite good for audience and myself to learn a little bit more.
Yeah.
What does it mean being part of the LGBTQ community?
What does it mean? I mean, for me personally, it means a lot. To know that I am part. So I'm a gay woman, and I'm very proudly a gay woman. It's taken me a long time to be able to kind of say it like that. But again, similar to kind of the neurological community, really, like knowing that you're part of something bigger, and that you're not weird or anything, for feeling how you might feel is just so important. And inclusive spaces are really, really important to that.
Has feeling like that, has that stemmed from like childhood, or is that like later on in life where you understood that you felt that you was gay in that sense?
So I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't. I came out when I was kind of at university.
Which is the term is insane.
Well, even as I'm saying, it's kind of silly, because one of the things I always think is it's not like you just kind of come out and it's like this one big thing, and it's like, ta-da, I'm here, world. But because you never stop coming out like that. It just,
because it's new to a lot of people. Some people still don't understand the concept. They don't get it. They're against it, or they just don't understand. Yeah,
exactly. And you meet new people all the time. Yeah. Your circumstances change all the time. And so I think it's just that over time you become, or I've found at least, that I've become just more comfortable with just saying, oh, my partner, she does this, right? But just not making a big thing about it. But I think because there's that thing of you coming out all the time, it's so important that for people to be an ally and and for inclusive spaces to exist, because it becomes a safe space then. And I've had some kind of nasty experiences. It used to kind of really offend me, but I've now got to a point where it's like, no, it's not a problem within me. It's their it's their thing. It's their disturbance. Not my.
I was going to ask that. Like, over the years, have you found that you've been discriminated against because of? Have you had experiences that have been very negative or affected you? Maybe more so when you were younger as opposed to now. Yeah,
I mean, probably the worst. I think overall I've probably been quite lucky. But the worst was like I was out with my then girlfriend. I was actually out in Vegas, like on the strip. We went to a bunch of casinos and stuff. And these two guys started hitting on me and my girlfriend. Anyway. And we explained that we were gay and together, and like they just started laying into us and like screaming at us on the middle of this casino floor, and people that have been on slot machines for like 24 hours finally kind of turning their head and seeing what was up. That was awful. But then and we were really shocked, and I remember just crying in this casino and everything. It was horrible. But after that, I kind of processing. It's like, well, no, it's not really my problem. Like, as in, they've got an issue. It's not. It's really not me. I think that was how old was I? I was about like 24 or something, 25, and I think that was quite a big turning point for me, because like prior to that, I'd been in relationships and I hadn't told my friends and family for ages. And I look back on that and I feel really guilty about it. Yeah, definitely, because I felt a lot of shame. And I don't know where that came from, other than I came from, I guess, quite a traditional family, and
Was it early 80s that grew up, or mid 80s, or less, or
90s? Early 90s. Early 90s, yeah. So I'm 33.
Okay.
And Yeah, my
late.
family, that's the thing, they're definitely not homophobic or anything like that, not particularly religious or anything like that either. But I used to have an uncle on my, I think my dad's side of the family, who was gay, but it wasn't really talked about. It was just one of the kind of a hush-hush thing. And he actually was a victim of kind of the AIDS crisis over in the US. But that wasn't really, it was always just kind of under the cover, and nobody really talked about it. And I think because
late
of that,
80s, early 90s, like it wasn't really like talked about as, it was just, you just get on with it.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
And the biggest thing was George Michael, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there was a very cliched, I think there's a very cliched thing of being gay, and that still exists to a certain extent now. I like to think, though, that things are changing. Like, I feel,
There's been a lot of campaigning, right?
Yeah.
Over the last few years.
Yeah. We've had gay marriage come in, which is really good. Stonewall have done, they've just released their new strategy and stuff, and they've also made the fact that they take the T part of LGBT very, very seriously, which is absolutely fantastic as well. So it feels like things are changing, and also just like you think about kind of LGBTQI representation in the media, on TV, all that sort of stuff. It's all changing. So I like to think that, teenagers now, for example, won't feel like, and can kind of see more people that might represent how they're feeling like inside, compared to when I was growing up. Like, it was quite novel. I like Brookside. They were the first ones, weren't they?
There was a storyline in Brookside, wasn't there?
Yeah, they had the first lesbian kiss, and that was like late 80s. So I was a bit too young for that. That was. That's not that long ago that happened. Whereas, if you think about some of the stuff on like Netflix, for example, at the moment, like Sex Education, all that, like it's definitely improving. Is that
actually an educational program?
Oh no, it's like it's just a.
I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Oh, it's just a
sitcom kind of.
Yeah, it's like a comedy drama thing, but it kind of represents queer voices really well, and they've. Just the way that they've done it, I think it's just really clever, really inclusive, and it's a hugely popular show. That's just one example, but I feel like there's a lot more LGBTQI representation more publicly, which is fantastic, but still perhaps not where we want it to be. And I do worry that it's a bit of a London-centric thing as well.
Really?
Well, yeah, because if I think about,
further up north you go.
Yeah. But that's such a generalisation. But if I think about like even attitudes in the charity sector to like equity, diversity, and inclusion, I think that isn't necessarily like a universal principle that's adopted as part of like the third sector's kind of way of doing things, and it absolutely should be. But the conversations are quite different depending on who you're talking to, the nature of the organisation, and it tends to be the London and South East organisations that kind of are a little bit further along with kind of their approach to kind of EDI compared to others. It's a massive generalisation, but my fear is that there's a bit too much variation there.
Yeah, I mean, London tends to be generally quite all-inclusive. There is a lot of people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different beliefs, and it seems to be a big audience, right?
Yeah.
In terms of like what goes on and everything else. There's a lot social media again, but there's a lot more awareness on social media of the LGBTQ community. A lot more, especially over the last 12 months, really. Yeah. Like I've seen it a lot more than it was.
That's interesting.
I think you just get to meet new people, through life, and like not everyone has to think the same way. Mm-hmm. Where I think in some parts of the world, it's definitely some parts of England, there are certain views that just like they will only look one way and that's it, and that's their right way, and actually there's a lot more ways than just one. Yeah, definitely. But it's trying to raise that awareness. Similar question with regards to the charities, like what can how do we raise more awareness? How do people have these more awkward or difficult conversations they're not maybe used to having?
I think this whole thing about kind of visibility and being a visible ally is just so important. So particularly if you're an employer or something like that. So things like having kind of rainbow tabards on, that sort of thing, if you're interviewing people, or using your own kind of communications channels to kind of share stories of I don't know, LGBTQI staff or whatever, that can be really, really powerful. And I think just kind of solidarity is just a really big thing. Yeah. There's some really antiquated stuff, though, that still exists within public policy. Like, I think it was only till recently that, it didn't always say mother and father on a birth certificate, that sort of thing. And so there are some kind of basic stuff that needs to change. But I think there's a lot that kind of people and organisations can do. Just, I think the visibility thing and being an ally. And also there's loads of good stuff to watch and read about LGBTQI history and everything. And just, it's good to kind of
That's
educate
interesting you say that about
well.
visibility. I think the way you said about the website, I think I'm going to look at our website and change something on there.
Yeah.
Because I think that's quite a valid point. I don't think you wouldn't realise unless you saw it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What are the plans for you in terms of where you want the charity to go, and also fitness-wise? What are the next couple of plans? What will the next 6 months look like?
So charity-wise, we definitely want to grow our membership, but the big thing is we're doing loads of work to kind of understand the impacts of the pandemic on people with neurological conditions. So we're about to do like a massive survey. We're hoping to get about 10,000 people to fill it out, hopefully more. And that's going to be really, really important because, we're going to hope to get lots of lovely media coverage off the back of that and get some airtime in Parliament, that sort of thing. So that's kind of the immediate priority. Fitness-wise, I mean, definitely going to continue. I haven't managed to do a proper pull-up yet. That's that's like definitely on my list. And continue to try and improve my double unders as well. But no, I think it's going to be the Ironman for second half of next year. So that might be kind of a bit of swim coaching, that sort of thing. But that and mobility, that's definitely always something that I've struggled with for quite a long time. So I wanted to continue to improve that.
You made a very massive change from when you first started, like over the first 4 months. Like you were really tuned into food and training, and you lost quite a bit of weight at the beginning, didn't you? Yeah.
I mean, I had a lot to lose, but like, I lost like 7 kilos in the first few months. And it's basically also because I wasn't being as active as I should be. And my diet was a bit rubbish, especially with work, it's quite stressful sometimes. So I wouldn't kind of plan what I was going to eat, and then I'd end up getting like a takeaway or all that kind of stuff. But just through the plan, like I learned loads about kind of proper nutrition and what my macros should be looking at, and also just not being scared of the weighing scales. Like, okay, if you put on a bit of weight, it's totally fine. It's kind of the longer term that, and also don't be too worried if you're heavier than you thought you would be, in that it's more about feeling comfortable in yourself.
Yeah.
But being here and kind of working through the program and stuff has definitely helped me kind of figure that stuff out, and just prioritizing kind of health over aesthetic, basically. That's kind of been the really, really key change. And it's simple enough to do, just with a bit of thought, really.
Prior to doing that, over the years of training, had aesthetic been something that you were like more focused on, as opposed to the health part?
Yeah. Not because I'm not kind of out of a vanity thing or anything, but just more that I'd be really worried that I, had a bit too much of a belly, or like, my legs were too thick or whatever. And actually, that in the long term, that really doesn't matter. Like I want to be able to like look after myself for as long as I can, and that means putting the investment in now to make sure that I'm giving my joints the best chance that they have, and all that other stuff, and also just like mentally looking after yourself. It's so rewarding, like not to feel like crap after like drinking too much or whatever, just I prioritize that stuff now far more over the aesthetic stuff, for sure.
And I've said a lot of times on the podcast, like none of that stuff I think matters if because it's not. I always say, and I'm glad that you said about feeling comfortable in your own skin, because that's what we try to teach. Is that actually none of that stuff does really matter. It's how you feel about yourself.
Yeah.
And whether you've got a six pack or not, it doesn't matter.
Definitely. And I found that was clear, like from the off when I started coming here, that and the fact that everything is scalable, and everybody's been super helpful about explaining different techniques and all that sort of stuff is really, really good. And I guess I kind of are starting to understand the purpose behind some of this, why you're doing certain movements or
which is music to my ears. I love that you're saying that.
No, but it changes the whole idea of it. You're not just it's not about just getting exercise done and like just because it's a good thing to do. It's kind of realizing, oh no, this is part of like a wider strategy of just feeling well, kind of mentally and physically, and and that's definitely, you've changed my thinking a lot. And
that's interesting.
For sure.
That's fascinating. I also wonder if that's connected to the style of work that you do, and that's why you maybe view it like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sure. Yeah. And to, like with my brother's diagnosis and stuff, like it's just make this thing of doing whatever you can to kind of feel better, to feel good as long as you can feel good, and like live independently as long as you can live. All of that is really, really important. And it's definitely linked to kind of what I hear day to day, because you can't really put a price on that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Georgina, we've run out of time for today. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your time. And guys and girls, we'll see you next week.